This video contains major spoilers for Metaphor ReFantagio. Okay. So I've been thinking about this for a long time. Like a really long time. Okay, not really that long, maybe like a couple hours. But I think it'd be cool to match Metaphor's followers to the Arcana from Persona. I know the Arcana isn't really a thing in Metaphor, but with how foundational it is to the social links and confidants in Persona, there's gotta be at least one matching persona to each of the followers, right? I'll go ahead and flash my final thoughts on the screen. Go ahead and take a look at it. Go ahead and write down your comments disagreeing with me and telling me that my thoughts are trash. And adios, viewer retention. It's been fun. Now that, I don't know, like 15% of you are still here, let's set up some ground rules for this. I'm gonna try to only assign each Arcana once. I'll give some alternate Arcanas if I feel that a follower could fit into multiple categories, which, let's be honest, many of them could, but I want to stick to one per character. I also can't give out every major Arcana because there just aren't enough followers. There's 14 followers and 22 major Arcana, so sorry if your favorite one gets left out. You're more than welcome to disagree with some of these choices. I think there's a lot of room for interpretation on the followers, but hopefully I can at least explain my decisions well. I'll be taking into account both the follower ranks, as well as the characters' arcs within the main story. That usually only applies to those in the party, but I thought it would be good to include that. With those things out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with More. I can see More falling into one of two Arcana. The first is the Hanged Man. Most Persona Hanged characters are stuck in a tough place in life. They can be between two stages of life, or maybe stuck in an unfortunate relationship between people. More, or rather, King Hephlodius V, is stuck between his vision for the future, a utopia where the tribes are united, and the burdens of the Sanctus Church clinging to power and influence. However, I think death works better for him. The Death Arcana doesn't necessarily mean the physical form of death, although that does in fact apply here. It's more of a spiritual death, the end of a cycle, a new beginning. His death not only starts the events of the game, but also represents the death of his ideals, only for Will to take up the mantle. So for me, I would give More the Death Arcana. Up next is everybody's favorite fairy companion, Gallica. To me, Gallica should really fall under the High Priestess Arcana. It's all about understanding yourself, about inner self-realization. She's the closest character to Will, and by extension, the Prince. So I feel that the two are inherently interconnected. Because of that, you could make the argument for the Fool, especially because her follower is locked behind story progression, but I feel that her slow realization that she wants to continue her travels with you, in spite of her altered memory, makes a stronger case for the Priestess. Stroll is the first major male ally that you make along your journey, and that kind of by default slots him into the Magician slot. That's kind of how it goes with the Persona series. The Magician has kind of sort of become the best friend character, but I do have other reasons. The Magician, like the High Priestess, is about self-realization. Except where the High Priestess is more about looking inward, the Magician is about manifesting those desires into the real world. It's about having the willpower and ability to realize your wishes. That's what Stroll seeks on his quest to save his people. He must put his parents' wisdom and the resources around him into action and take charge. You could definitely make an argument for strength. It takes a lot of not only focus and determination, but also compassion for his people, for Stroll to overcome his insecurity. Personally though, I like Magician the best for him. Plus, there's a character down the line whom I think fits the Strength Arcana way better. Hulkenberg, to me, is pretty unquestionably the Hierophant. The Arcana is about tradition and morality, pretty similar to the Code of Honor which many knights adhere to. Ironically, the Hierophant is usually a mentor figure to the protagonist of each Persona game. However, with Hulkenberg, she is your faithful servant. Granted, that doesn't come until the end of the game, but it's a nice twist on the trope. Her follower is clearly based off of this. Her corrupt former comrade serves as a foil to her idyllic beliefs on knighthood, as well as serving as a representation of the reversed Hierophant. Another character whom I think fits pretty clearly into one Arcana is Heisme. He is the Emperor of Metaphor. The Emperor is the paternal Arcana. and there is no better way to describe basically his entire character than with his relationship with his dead son. His initial decision to go into hiding was because he wanted to run away from facing his son's death, and then his entire follower is about finding a final resting spot for his son. I could see maybe you argue for death, but I would say that most of us can agree that Heismei goes into the Emperor slot. Juna. Oh, Juna, the famed songstress. I feel like we have to put her into the Lover's Arcana. She just fits so well with all the other Lover's girls. I immediately knew where I wanted to put her, but I wasn't exactly sure why. Like, Juna is the Lovers of Metaphor because it just makes sense. After some thought, I think it's because she, like the Lover's Arcana, is defined by her relationships with others around her. Her trust of Basilio and Fidelio, her facade with Louise, her strained yet hopeful rivalry with Myrtis, and of course, her relationship with her true form. That's what the Lovers is about. Yes, it's come to mean romance, and there are some undertones of romantic attraction in the later ranks, but it's more about her interactions with all of the other characters. Next up is Yufa. Now, I can really see the argument for the High Priestess here. For one, she's literally a priestess, and her follower would certainly work well with that Arcana, but not only do I think Gallica works better as the priestess, I think there's actually a better option for Yufa. That being the Wheel of Fortune. Hear me out. Fortune isn't really about being lucky. It's about fate. It's about understanding that while you can't control what life throws your way, you can decide where you go from there. I think that perfectly encapsulates Yufa during the events of Virga Island and the Dragon Temple. She had resigned herself to being a sacrifice for her people. That was her life's purpose. But it was one assigned to her. Only after meeting your group and learning the truth behind the dragon god Et does she decide to live life on her own terms. So to me, she fits really well as both the priestess and Fortune, but I would have her as the Wheel of Fortune of Metaphor. Basilio. He becomes a party member a little late, but he's relevant in the story for much longer. I think that he's the Strength Arcana. Yes, he's strong and that's part of strength, but this Arcana is more about inner strength, bravery, and compassion, all of which he more than demonstrates. He and Fidelio both showed immense resilience in their upbringing, surviving the brutal Parapus experiments forced upon them by the Church, and managed to work their way up the ranks through sheer willpower. In spite of this, the two of them still managed to hold compassion for the weak, as shown in the scene when Del sacrifices himself. I guess you could also assign Fidelio the same Arcana since the two are basically joined at the hip for most of the story, but Basilio is a follower, so he gets the Strength Arcana. Nereus is the final party member, if you want to call him that. I think we can all agree that he's the Hermit, both in the sense that he's kind of got the classic hermit, mad genius personality, but also because his follower is about his search for the truth. He buries himself in work out of guilt for not being able to stop the Igniter experiments. Will ends up caught up in his curiosity through the fetch quest for the ancient relics. Nereus has been trying to find these bad boys for a while until he finally realizes what they're for. They're an ancient weapon that could potentially destroy the world. And so, after some self-reflection, he decides that, hey, maybe these things aren't good to keep together after all. It's his search for the truth and wisdom that solidify him as the Hermit of Metaphor. Time for Maria. She's Greece's daughter with that naive positivity that we all once had. It's her faith in others that leads me to give her the Star Arcana. Showing up near the end of the major Arcana, the star represents hope, inspiration, and healing. Maria's actions in trying to help others in Sunshade Row make her a positive inspiration for those around her. It's that juvenile sense of optimism that allows her to bring others together that an adult wouldn't be able to accomplish. Her archetype that she unlocks is also the healer, which goes well with the Star Arcana. I don't think you can really do that for many of the other followers, but it does work well here. Maria is a character whom I struggled to match with an Arcana, but I feel that Star works the best for her. Unlike Katharina, who is unquestionably the Chariot. I mean, hot-headed brawler who is seeking to protect her people, no doubt. I feel like I barely need to write much else about her. The Chariot has always been a brash ally for the past few Persona games, and Katharina fits that mold to a T. I don't think anyone can really disagree with me on this one. Now it's time for my favorite follower, Alonso. He is the devil of metaphor. The Arcana itself represents greed, so of course, like Katharina, it felt like a no-brainer to me. Ironically, most of the reversed meanings of the devil would be considered good, and then the upright meanings would be bad, which kind of follows his story. He's in a better place at the beginning, but then his mother dies and his town hates him. There's nowhere left for him to go, so he's forced to fake his own death and live in secrecy. You could make the argument for magician, since the reverse meaning represents deception and manipulation. However, I feel that the upright meanings don't reflect Alonso's personality at all. One of Alonso's archetype is the trickster, and who's the trickster of a certain Persona game? And what's his final persona? And how does that relate to the devil? Just a thought. Getting towards the end here, we have Barden. He always reminded me of the Moon social links. In those, they tend to focus on the parts of themselves that they hate. That is the Moon. It's a reflection of the parts of ourselves that we struggle to accept. And so, the characters tend to regress or be unlikable. Barden displays this with his rule over Martyra. The almost tyrannical surveillance state is a poor reflection on the fact that he just wants to protect those around him. It's only by accepting that bad part of himself, but also the villagers understanding the root of those actions, can Barden and the rest of Martyra continue to move on from the tragedy of Lady Joanna. I can understand placing him as Emperor. That Arcana is about order and structure in addition to fatherhood, but I felt that Heisme worked better as Emperor, and Barden always felt more like a traditional Moon social link to me. And that leads us to the final follower of the game, Brigida. She was probably the character I went back and forth the most on, but I think I've settled on Temperance, the Arcana of balance. That's why it pretty much always has a scale on the tarot card itself. Her life was one of extremes. First, she lived in poverty. Then she decided that she would become a powerful merchant using whatever means necessary. She adopted a dog, but after the dog gets stolen, decides to burn a village to the ground, which, okay, fair, understandable. Her story is just one extreme after another. She finally settles on finding alternate uses for igniters, and eventually adopts 2 Ujif children. Only through will can she find balance in her life, and not swing wildly from one emotional reaction to the next. I had thought about Empress as well, given her motherly nature with her dog and the 2 kids she adopts. I can honestly see Brigida going either way, and I don't think any other followers fit into either the Empress or Temperance, so I'd be fine having her as either. So that's the list. Going through in order of the Arcana: no one as the Fool, Stroll as the Magician, Gallica is the Priestess, no Empress, Heisme is Emperor, Hierophant is Hulkenberg, Juna is the Lovers, Katharina is the Chariot, nobody is Justice, the Hermit is Nuris, the Wheel of Fortune belongs to Yufa, Basilio would be Strength, nobody is the Hanged Man, Moore fits well with Death, Brigida is Temperance, the Devil is Alonso, no Tower here, Maria is the Star, and finally, Barden is the Moon. I don't think there's a character in metaphor for the Sun, Judgment, or the World. Feel free to leave your disagreements in the comments. I will be sure to delete them and report you to YouTube because my opinions are objectively correct. Thank you for watching.